Okay, here we are. How you doing tonight, Ruth? You doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Okay, all righty. We got a good show planned tonight. We got a great author who is going to be with us. We are missing our partner in crime tonight, though.
Yeah, she wasn't able to make it.
Yep, she's not here tonight. So we're going to start with you in review.
I have a
And
story.
I will go in. Yes, you really do.
I really do.
Then I will go, and then you can come back and do
Sure.
the bio
Okay.
uh, on of our author, and we will roll it that way for tonight.
Sounds good.
I think. Do we have? You said that we had a show coming up where we're going to talk about next year.
Yeah, next week actually.
Is it next week? Okay.
It is next week, yes.
Okie dokie. All right. Well, obviously, I need to do some things because I couldn't remember that that's what was happening.
Well,
Okay.
no, we got some brainstorming to do
Yes,
for
we
next
do.
week.
We do. We do. And that's always fun. So,
Mhm.
hoping everything will be all right with our compadre and we
Oh
will
yeah.
be able to get that in and make that happen. And
Yep.
hey, I'm ready to go because I want to make sure that our author has enough time to do a little bit of reading tonight and tell us all about his book, his
Yep.
books, because I want to hear about some of the other books that he has as well. So
Absolutely.
that's it. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, Alan, we
No.
are ready.
All right. Well, ready or not, you're going anyway. Here we go, everybody.
Okay.
Have a good one. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Well, welcome everybody. You have tuned in to Authors Up on ALH Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Streaming Inspirational Broadcast Network. And we are so glad that you have chosen to join us tonight. We have a very special guest who has a very interesting book that he's going to share with us tonight. And we're missing our friend. We're missing
Yes.
Victoria tonight. So we're going to make sure that we, kind of keep her on your mind, on your heart. And if you want to send a prayer up, that'd be a good thing. And if
Hmm.
not, that's still okay. But just be thinking about it because we miss her. When one of us is missing, there is
Hmm.
definitely something missing. Three of us are together so much on these broadcasts that when one of us isn't here, it just kind of leaves a little bit of a, I don't even know what to call it. We just don't do well without our three folks in place. But we're gonna do our best tonight. So if
That's right.
Victoria is tuning in, tell her we're gonna try our best. We're gonna try our best to be without her this evening. But let's get started. Let's get started with our weekend review. And Ruth, I definitely think that you should start because if you don't, I don't know, we may be missing you.
Ah, yeah. So we have a couple trips planned for next year out of the country. So, we gave ourselves a year to get our passports, my husband and I, and so we started this process back in October, right before Thanksgiving. My husband received his passport, and I thought, oh, there must be a delay. I'll get mine the next day. What I got the next day was a letter from the State Department stating that they were denying me a passport because my birth certificate did not list my parents' names. And I thought, I've had this birth certificate since forever. why are you being picky? I didn't print it at home. It is an official, but so I contacted the New Jersey Vital Records, and they not only sent me one birth certificate, but three birth certificates. So apparently, there were a few times in my life where my name was not Ruth E. Velasquez, my maiden name. So um, it was Ruth, it was Celine, it was Ruseline, it was, I mean, just names. And like the back, the third page had like every name listed. So I'm not even sure that when I submit this birth certificate that the State Department will go, no, we're not doing this.
How many names were there, Ruth?
There were about six names. That's what I don't
6 names?
understand. There were about six names. And when I called my dad and I was like, please explain, he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, you only had one, this was your name. And I'm like, no, you signed it. See, right here. And you signed this page and you signed this page. He's like, huh, I don't remember that. So that is where I'm at. Um, I'm going to try to call the New Jersey Vital Records next week, this coming week. But I have to resubmit all the paperwork, so I'll let you know if I'm allowed to leave the country at some point.
Please.
Yes, yeah, of course. And of course, my family thinks this is hilarious. All of them have been like, "Oh, I don't even know who you are anymore." I'm like, "Shut up." So, yeah, and it might explain why every time I go through TSA security, I have to get a pat down. So they may have something
I've
on me that
wondered
I
about
don't
that
know.
before.
Yes,
You know,
I just thought I was randomly picked, but maybe not. There might be some other stuff out there that I may not know about. So, yeah, so that was my adventure last week. At this point, I feel like I'm living a soap opera, and yeah, there's more to come.
more to come. More to
More to
come.
come.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, you
Yeah.
got to get that straight before you get ready to try and leave the country.
I
Right.
know that's what it boils down to. I want to try. And my husband was like, "Well, I don't know if we want to do that at this point. They may not let you back in." Like, please don't speak that. So that was my week. How was yours?
Mine was good, but I want to tag on to your
Okay.
story about your birth certificate. You had 6 names. I didn't have one. When I got mine, when I had to get my birth certificate, my first name was Baby. They they hadn't even bothered to give me a name yet. And I thought 9 months, you knew I was coming. Well, why were you not prepared? So it said Baby Henson. That was it on my birth certificate.
Wow.
So fortunately, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I I have to update mine as well. So I will get that going. Um,
Mhm.
had just medical stuff last week. I did cheat a little bit
Uh-oh.
on my NaNoWriMo thing. I kind of pulled that up and read a little bit of it and
Oh,
thought to
okay.
myself, you were either really, really sleepy or something went really, really wrong. But it'll be interesting to try and piece that together in a way that makes sense. So that's what I worked on it a little bit and could see some of the areas that absolutely need to be adjusted. But
Yeah.
it'll be a good process. It'll be a
Hmm.
good process, and I'm looking forward to going on with that. Hey, Naikayeta is in the house tonight. Glad
All
to have
right.
you in, lady. Nice to have you. Um, talk about Ruth. I want you to talk about our guest
Oh,
for the
absolutely.
evening. I'm excited about our guest that we have tonight, and I think our audience is going to love it as well.
Yeah.
So, talk about it.
Okay. So Stephen Joseph is a first generation American, the son of a Holocaust survivor, a masterful attorney, seasoned negotiator, engaging speaker, award winning author, and a long distance runner, having completed 53 marathons, which includes 5 times at Boston and 18 times at the New York City Marathon. With a sharp sense of humor that has kept him chuckling back and forth at countless synagogues, he's also spent many years sitting in the stillness on a cushion, trying desperately to empty his mind while staring at the blank white wall at the village Sendo. Despite his extensive life experience, he remains wise enough to acknowledge that he hasn't figured everything out, except perhaps for the art of effective crankiness. Despite his long partnership with therapists and his time spent as an attorney, Stephen remains grounded and approachable with a wit that is as quick as his award winning blog is insightful. Don't believe us? See for yourself when you visit Stephen Joseph's website, stephenjosephauthor.com. After the break, it will be time to meet our author of the evening, Stephen Joseph.
Well, let's see where. There, whoop, there we
There
go.
we go. All right.
Got my passport.
See, okay, somebody does. I'm glad to see that.
Glad you're all set, Stephen. Glad you're
Yes.
all set. And welcome to Authors Up. We are so
Absolutely.
happy to have you with us tonight, and we're just looking forward to you sharing with us about your great book, your unusual book, and we're just looking forward to it. So
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm going to let Ruth get started here.
Okay, so I will admit the title was what drew me in when I received the query for you to be on the show. So I think we will start there. Tell us about your book.
Well, the book is Cranky Superpowers, Life Lessons Learned from the Common Crankosaurus Chronicles. It happens to be a follow-up to a grown-up guide to effective crankiness, the
Nice.
Crankosaurus method. So I, I've written about crankiness. My first book was The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyranta, Crankosaurus. It's a story about the smallest dinosaur on the planet and how all humans evolved from the smallest dinosaur, most dangerous dinosaur, because she's very cranky. And that's why when babies are born, they start crying. It's because we're all evolved from the Tyrantocrankosaurus. And and then after, I had no plans to keep doing all this stuff, but somebody wrote a review on that book saying, "Oh, he didn't talk about enough about overcoming crankiness." And
Oh,
I was all about embracing our crankiness, accepting the fact that we happen to be a cranky group of people around here. So I started writing stuff, and then I had enough for my first book, and now this is my second book, and my second book is a lot of fun stories, which I have no idea how I came up with, but they're there, and they're so much fun, and I'm glad to share them with people.
okay. So what, I feel like most of us have a theme to our lives. How did Cranky become yours?
Um, well, I'm an attorney, and like I happen to manage other attorneys. It was nice when I was a young lawyer and I would be learning. Now I'm an elder statesman, so a lot of things gets me cranky. But and I even talk about how law school is. The first year of law school, you learn how to get on people's nerves. In the second year of law school, you learn how to rub people the wrong way. And by the third year of law school, you learn how to get underneath people's skin. And when you go all do three things together all at the same time, you're a lawyer. So,
Very
so,
accurate.
so if you can imagine that kind of group of people that I surround myself with for the last 37 years, I get a little cranky.
Okay. Okay,
So,
that's fair.
yes.
So you started off with a children's book, you went to adult. How was that transition? Do you feel like did it assist you in writing the adult version?
No, that was easy. I've written before as an attorney. I teach negotiation. I've written on negotiation, uh, also litigation management, which is boring, but negotiation is fun. We're and I love doing what I do in my day job, where like you literally could press a button and you know the exact response that's going to be coming back, and it's very satisfying. Yep, I knew that's going to happen. So I come from that background. I've also been married to a therapist for 32 years, so I have that in me. So you combine the two, and uh, actually the psychology stuff helps in negotiation because it's giving the other side the opportunity to be heard, having empathy. It's not about winning. I actually try to make people think that they won, that I went home in my underwear, like I gave my shirt, my all my clothes, that sort of thing. It's that kind of attitude, and I approach crankiness and effective crankiness, and uh, how to give people the opportunity to be heard, how to manage through disputes and effectively, and that becomes like effective crankiness, and now cranky superpowers. So that like I have that kind of background that it's fun when I feel like I wrote the book that only I could write,
Hmm.
and that's very exciting to me that I get the opportunity to do that.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. So you have a natural humor that just comes through in um, your book, in the stories that you tell, in everything that you write. Um, is that something that, I called it natural. Is that something you cultivated? Is that something that you use as, because I mean, let's be honest, you're an attorney. So is that something that balances that?
I use the humor a lot in negotiation.
Hmm.
Uh, so uh, it certainly helps to make a point, to amplify a point. So uh, so I take that, and I know how effective that is.
Right.
To and While my book is, I think, hysterically funny, and I'm so happy when people write reviews that they think it's laugh out loud, hysterically funny. I go, yes, so I get excited about that. But there is a serious point that I want to make a point, and
Hmm.
I do that in negotiation where uh, I'm making a very serious point, but I'm putting light on it. And I always, just to be a lawyer for a second, I always say I manage cases the way I would try a case when I'm negotiating. In particular, in your opening statement, you talk about what the evidence will show. I talk about the promises I can make. It's not about fancy experts. I mean, well, that's the other piece. But what are those airtight, ironclad, rock solid promises? And my closing argument is that it's my favorite case to try. It's not because of fancy experts or sexy issues. That's where I start talking about that. But it's because it's a common sense. I can rely on the common sense of the jury whenever I can do that. Juries do
Sure.
always the right thing. And so I have this common, like, so what's the common sense? It feels right, smells right, tastes right. And making things like so obvious, and then bringing humor into it to
Hmm.
amplify what is obvious. So I do that in different stories here, and it's funny. Like there is, I think I'm done, and then there's like 20 more things. I'm still not done with crankiness, which I can't believe it. I think I've been writing about crankiness since 2020.
Oh, wow.
So or 2019, I think it was. So it's like you think you've tapped the well enough that it's dry, but there, even like every week there's something that comes up.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so you have a lot of areas that you talk about crankiness, and within those areas, you have different stories, different examples, fairy tales. How you said that every week you tap into something else. How did you come up with that? How did you decide what to put in the book?
Uh, it's like something that happens in life
Hmm.
uh, that gives me the opportunity to think about that, and and then once I have that, it's like, oh, there's a story, and sometimes and I'm a runner. I'll go out running. Like I actually wake up around 5 and go out from 6 to like 8:30 every morning. I literally run for 2.5 hours, and my writing happens when I run, where
Hmm.
it's like, oh, the light bulbs go off, and then I start writing, and then I could come back and write what I was writing in my head. So. I had a situation. This is like my daughter. Where she gave me her word that she would do something, and of course, you know how children are. They don't always do what they said they were going to do. So uh, I thought about also. I had in my head, giving me your word versus keeping your word, and then
Mm.
there's a light bulb. I was thinking this around time in the newspaper with the classified documents. So I came up with a story where I went to a yard sale and they bought classified documents from the 1960s, and it was all these historical records from Starship Enterprise from Star Trek,
Yeah.
and and it was the interview between Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk, and Captain Kirk wanted Mr. Spock to give him his word that he was the most loyal person. And Mr. Spock says, I can't do that. It's against, and he had to explain the history of the Vulcans, why if you give your word, it's punishable by death, but you have to
Hmm.
keep, like you have to keep your word there. So there was a lesson there, but it was a hysterically funny story
Hmm.
that I was able to blend in with what I want to say. So uh, everything I write, I really want it to have some. I want it to be hysterically funny. I
Hmm.
like the funny. I think people attach to that, and it becomes something they could relate to, and they could own, and they could. It sticks with them, and I like so. My next book is actually a children's book, my third Snoodles book. So I have like I should show you Snoodles in
Nice.
space and Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. So what I'm so excited about the next book, and one of the things when an author is excited about a book is because they didn't think that book was coming. It's like, no, I'm done. I did it, went there, done that. And all of a sudden something pops in your head and there was a story
Hmm.
and I never knew. It's like, so next book is Noodles in Space, episode 2, The Zulus Strike Back. And I love this because it's about shaming. Uh, so, so it was like one day I had no story. I have the most amazing illustrator. He's willing to do it for free, and he's brilliant. And I don't let him work for free, of course. But he said you have to come up with stories. I have nothing. Next day, all of a sudden, the balloon pops in my head, and I had an idea. And this is a takeoff of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy
Uh-huh.
Wonka.
Uh,
And if you think about that story, uh, everybody loves Charlie, and then you have these spoiled kids who do things that they're not supposed to do. So I turn it upside down, and because if you think about it, if you even think about the original movie, it was a media circus. It was a media frenzy. Everybody was there. All the TV cameras and the newspapers and the tabloids and radio stations, and these kids really, like, one kid turns purple, one kid's it's not doesn't turn out very well for them, and there must have been a lot of negative news
Hmm.
press, whatever. So they were ridiculed, but they turned out to be the heroes of the story. And
Right.
it's like, oh, that is an important story. but it's hysterically silly and ridiculous. And so you have that story. We're not talking about this book, my Cranky Superpowers book, but I think this gives the same message. So you have Frippy Frumpy Fruital and Wimpy Whiny Woodle, and Frippy Frumpy has Fitsy Witsy Papa Doodle, and blows up and pops, and Wimpy Whiny Woodle has a Swizzly Twizzly Slimadoodle, and she turns into a bucket of slime. So you can imagine what the newspapers said. They were on the front pages of the newspapers the next day. And it's terrible. And like, I just think of like what today, like kids shaming each other. And that's why it's like, I get excited about the important message but being ridiculous and hysterically funny and making people laugh at the same time. And that's what I do with Cranky Superpowers. And that's where I get excited, where it's the message. It's not so much like you're having a good time. You don't have to do the 2-drink minimum. It's like stand-up comedy. When you read this book, it's like stand-up comedy, but you don't have to buy the drinks. If you want to have the drinks, you're at home, you can read a book, you have a drink, fine. Yes. But that's what this book is.
And you do that really well, because I have to say, it was, for me, it was a page turner that once I got started and I realized what I was reading, I was good to keep going. So okay. I enjoyed your take on Cinderella. I enjoyed your learning about your parents, the remote and all of that. So there was a lot in there to enjoy. And
thank you.
You're welcome. If you could, we'd like for you to read an excerpt so our audience can get an example.
So before you read, Steve,
yes.
Let me ask you something real quick. How long? I know for me, and I write totally differently but I am on the poetic side, so I like things that have that rhythmic, meter and all to it. But how long did it take you to write the children's book?
The children's book,
the dinosaur one, yeah.
Well, the first one, that was like in just one night. The story just appears in my head. Literally, the children's book, the story is always like somehow gets into my head. The children's book was inspired. The first one, The Last Surviving Dinosaur. I was in Rome with my wife, and there was a power. We were rented the Airbnb. It's summertime. She was coloring her hair, and black dye got in her eye, and she was a little cranky. And I said she's like the Tyrannosaurus. Saurus is the Yiddish word for problems. So she was like very complaining. So I said that's how probably all the dinosaurs died. There's one little dinosaur who kept cranking out its saurus till all the other dinosaurs dropped dead. And that became funny for her. She started laughing. And then it was only like 5 months later, I came up with a story about how all humans evolved from the Tyrannosaurus. So that's how it all started.
Now, when you finished that, did you have it in your head, or was it the same kind of process? Were you even thinking when you did that, oh, gee, I can transfer this over to an adult version, or
it was,
you were done?
Well, the first story, so I have this situation in August, and then the story pops in my head in April the next year. So that was like transferring to dinosaurs, and it was just, I don't know, like it just came to, I didn't come to it, came to me. And then with the Snoodles children's stories, they all happened again, like I'm writing, like focusing on crankiness. And like in the first book, in this book, there was a situation where I have this art restoration, Pierre Latoudle, who tries to restore this painting because it was covered with sauerkraut. And he keeps complaining that he barely scratched the surface. and how he restores painting is by scratching, which is kind of silly. But like it was really a busy time in my life where I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. So
Mm.
there's always something that that happens in my life that inspires a story. So, like in this book, in Cranky Superpowers, I have first rodeo Crankosaurus, and I could tell you from being an attorney, I do a lot of mediations, and you have these pompous attorneys where they kind of like pound on the table, say, "This ain't my first rodeo," and that all of a sudden happened. Oh wow, that's a story. And then I had a story about how the first this ain't my first rodeo came to be, and I created a character. So that's how it happens. It's just
Mhm.
it's what life gives me. So
Well, I
it
tell you,
happens.
it is very unique. Like I told you before we got on the air, it is very unique, very enjoyable, and it's one of a kind, man. I tell you, it really is. And I went to your website, and I know so many people that I want to send there to read about. I'm not a morning person. I enjoyed that immensely. But I'm not going to interrupt you anymore because I do want to hear you read the excerpt that you've chosen for tonight.
Okay, so like I mentioned, or you guys also mentioned that I do these stories, or I take like old stories like Cinderella. Uh, so I completely redid Cinderella. That's kind of long. I also did The Wizard of Oz, and I don't want to read the entire thing,
Mhm.
but the this was Spinning Your Wheel Crankosaurus. Again, I call every chapter Crankosaurus because that's what it is. Like, and I talk about the common Crankosaurus, thinking it's something we all experience. So not get overwhelmed by it. It's not like you don't get, oh, I have a cold. I never had a cold. It's called a common cold. Common Crankosaurus. You get 2 or 3 in the morning alone. So you like acknowledge it, don't beat yourself up about it,
Mhm.
and try to learn from it, and we become better persons and probably less cranky. So oh, all of a sudden I want to read something else, but okay, I'm going to read this. So this
Okay.
is from
Whatever you want to do.
I'll get to that other thing after,
Okay.
because that's a lot
I'm
of fun for me,
curious now.
because I don't even have to read. Okay, anyway, so I did the Wizard of Oz,
Uh-huh.
and I read this is Spinning Your Wheels, Crankosaurus. So I'll start from, after they melted the witch, they went into the ding dong song. And I don't know about you, whenever I'm very happy, I start singing ding dong songs. Just that's how I am. So and sure enough, they're they were singing ding dong, the witch is dead.
Mhm.
That song. I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. So I'm gonna start from there, and I hope it's not too long. After finishing singing the Ding Dong song, Dorothy and her friends eagerly went quickly back to see the great Wizard of Oz. With the broom, the bucket, the wicked witch's wicked wings, and the Munchkinland muffins, now, of course, made with real munchkins. Now, surely now the Scarecrow was going to get a brain, the Tin Man was going to get a heart, the Cowardly Lion was going to receive some courage, and most importantly, Dorothy was going back home to Kansas to be with Auntie Anne. After knocking on the palace door, the guard let everyone in. The guard instructed them to all wait in a room while he brought to the wizard the broom, the bucket of the wicked witch's wicked wings, and the box of Munchkinland muffins. After a few hours pass, they all are led into the grand hall where the wizard was sitting. The wizard began to speak. These wicked wings are the best. I want all of you to go back to the castle and get me the recipe. Just think, if I get hold of the recipe for those wicked wings, I could open up Wicked Witches, Wicked Wings shops all throughout Emerald City. I won't have to do this dumb wizard gig anymore. I'll tell you what. You get me the recipe, and you all get 10% cut in the profits. What do you say? The scarecrow folded his arms. I say no way. We had a deal. We brought you what you asked for, and I want a brain. Tin Man shouted, I want a heart. The cowardly lion stuck his head in. I want some courage. And Dorothy, holding her dog Toto, said, I just want to go home. The scarecrow then walked up to the wizard and started to speak. I know exactly the kind of brain I want too. Last week I saw this movie. I think it's called Young Frankenstein. They put in this big man's head a moron brain. That's what I want, a moron brain. Tin Man turned to the Scarecrow. I saw the movie too. I think that was really a moron brain that they end up putting in the monster's head. You definitely do not want that. Thank you, Tin Man. Scarecrow replied. Okay, wizard, give me one of your less on brains. The wizard shook his head. Unfortunately, I do not have any brains handy right now. There is a 10-year waiting list even for a moron brain. However, I do have something for you. Where I come from, there are people no less brainless than you are. However, they get their parents to pay huge sums of money to go to a place called university. There, for 4 years, they barely learn a thing, but they get to party, drink lots of alcohol, and takes all sorts of drugs. I hear they end up killing up any brain cells they had in their head to begin with. When they finally get out, they get a piece of paper called a diploma. So it gives me now the distinct honor and pleasure to present you, Scarecrow, with a diploma from Emerald City Technical College.
All right.
Scarecrow then looked at his diploma. It says Bachelor's of Science, Straw Maintenance. Hey, this is not our deal. You are spinning my wheel. The Tin Man then turned and said, what about me? I want a heart. Surely there can't be a waiting period for a heart transplant. Let me think, said the wizard. Can I offer you some wicked wings while I figure out what to do? No, thank you, said Tin Man. To be honest with you, wizard, the wicked wings give me a bit of heartburn. The wizard then waved his hand. No problem. Now I know what to do. Check out this old-fashioned alarm clock, shaped and colored just like a heart, no less. Stick it in your tin can of that body of yours, and it'll sound just like the real thing. Are you kidding me? Said the Tin Man in disbelief. Look at my wrist. I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I didn't risk my life to get a stupid, cheap, plastic $2 alarm clock. This is not our deal. You are spinning my wheel. Cowardly Lion then turned to the wizard. What about me? I need to get courage. I know exactly why I need to get it. My 3 older brothers, they always tell me the same thing. They say I need to grow a pear. The wizard looked puzzled. A pear what? Do you want me to grow you a pear tree? The Cowardly Lion replied, no, not a pear tree. I don't know what exactly they are, but my brothers tell me that they're called cojones. The wizard again waved his hand dismissively. I've never heard of them, but this is what I could do for you. For your bravery and skill in taking care of getting rid of the wicked witch, I proudly present you with a medal of courage. The Cowardly Lion looked at the medal. I see the word courage on the front. I can't make out what it says in the back. The Scarecrow took the medal and read out loud. It says, there are no losers in life. Everyone is a winner. You are the last winner. You are the last winner? I don't think that is much of a compliment. The Cowardly Lion was angry. I don't like this. This is not our deal. You are spinning my wheel. Dorothy looked down. I guess that means you can't help me either, said Dorothy. The wizard again waved his arms. Absolutely false. For you, I plan to take you home personally in my hot air balloon that brought me here 30 years ago. Of course, I haven't flown it in 30 years, but I'm sure it's like riding a bike. Tin Man looked sternly at Dorothy. He is spinning your wheel too. That is right, added the Scarecrow. Don't you remember what Auntie Em used to tell you? She said, never take a hot air balloon ride with strangers. They could be around the world in 80 days with this lunatic. A 14-year-old girl in a hot air balloon with a strange old man does not sit right with me. and doesn't even have a pot to pee in. The Tin
Oh.
Man looked at his watch. Perhaps I could use my Apple Watch to order you an Uber to get back home. Of course, that is if I could ever get internet here. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the cowardly lion leaped towards the wizard. With one big bite, he swallowed the wizard whole. The wizard was no more. The scarecrow turned to the lion. That was amazing. And look at Lion. Lion, you grew a pair. Everyone joyfully yelled, Cojones! The lion then beamed proudly. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? So
Well, this is the part. This is the part in the program where Victoria always pipes up and says, "Get the book." So I encourage our listeners to get the book. One thing, we think of certain professions and certain characteristics of people and how they are. I would never have thought or never think that an attorney would be able to turn out that kind of humor in a children's book or a book for adults. And I think you have an amazing gift, Stephen. And I know that if you are just writing what is being downloaded to you, that the books are going to keep coming. And it's something that we all need, which is laughter. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you reading that bit. And look, where can we get the book? Where can we find it?
you could find it obviously Amazon, barnesandnobles.com, all those websites. You could go straight to my website and it directs you to where you have to go. So any of those websites, Target, whatever, not Home Depot, Walmart, Walmart,
Yes.
you could do it there, so all those places. So
Yes.
Awesome. And I did want to personally welcome Freeport on the line tonight. The Bahamas was with us this evening, and we appreciate them joining as well. Ruth, was there something that you wanted to say?
I do, but I wanted to give our author the opportunity. We're getting ready to close out. Do you have any closing remarks? Anything you wanna-
No, the other thing I would have read, and I think I'm very proud of it, just like in terms of the book also talks about relationships. There's one chapter called Crankosaurus Menopause.
Yes, I saw that.
So the thing of what I end the chapter and I talk about my relationship and I think this works, even though it's counterintuitive. So in my relationship with my wife, we get to be 75% normal, but you get to be 5% insane and 20% crazy. But you have to be 75% normal. And you might think that, well, that's crazy. You do the math, 20% crazy. That's like over 70 days a year of craziness. I don't know if I can handle that. It's counterintuitive. And I talk about this in my book, because if I told you, Ruth, you're allowed to be 0% crazy, when you do become crazy, because we all become crazy, you say, I'm not crazy. You're the one who's really crazy. And because I don't like to be called crazy by a crazy person, I think then you became insane. And then I think you're and then I become crazy. And then we both become crazy and insane all at the same time. So by giving you 20% crazy, 5% insane, because you appreciate, and first of all, when you become crazy, it's she has 20%. Why am I getting upset about it? She has 20% crazy. Let her be crazy for up to 20%, and then 21% I'll say something. So I'm not getting upset about it. You have a right to that craziness. You appreciate the ability to be crazy and not being judged for it.
Yes.
So you're feeling good about it. Hey, and so again, it's counterintuitive. If I gave you 0%, you'd be 50, 60% crazy. But by giving you 20%, you end up using maybe 1% a year.
Oh, I love it. I love
And
it. It's like building it into the budget.
That's right. And I really think if people watching this podcast takes that away and uses that as a guide to their own relationships, I think they'll be doing very, very well.
Very,
That is
very well.
awesome.
Very,
Yes.
very well.
And that is just one tidbit of many in this book. So I personally would recommend this book to all our listeners. And I would say go get the book. Since Victoria's not here to say it, get the book. So
Yep.
that's right. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your
Thank
story
you,
and your
Ruth.
book.
Thank you,
Yes.
Andrea. Thank you. This
Thank
is a
you.
pleasure.
Yes.
So, and I just want to say to our audience, thank you for joining us as well. We are on social media, so please follow us, please like, please subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can download our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, and just search for Authors Up Show. You can listen to a replay on Saturday night at 7 p.m. on SIBN, as well as Facebook Live, if that's your preference mode. Otherwise, you can watch us on YouTube or download the podcast this Wednesday.
That is it. Well done, Ruth. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that is it for us for tonight, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed listening to Stephen as much as we did. And I hope that you will invest in the book. What we need to
Yes.
be able to do is laugh sometimes. And I tell you
Yes.
what, this is a joy. It really is. Great stories, very creative, very unique. And it's just something that you need to invest in. Invest in you, invest in smiling, invest in some laughter, and you will enjoy this book indeed. So, Stephen, thank you again. Thank you for
Andrea.
being with us. We look forward to seeing more things from you, and I know that they will be as delightful and enjoyable as this is. And let me see if I can say out a grown-up guide to effective crankiness, and I seek the common Crankosaurus Chronicles.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, this is
And Cranky Superpowers. Got to
That's
get
right.
the Cranky Superpowers. And that is it for us for tonight. Come on back next week. We will be here. Hopefully, Victoria will be back with us next week as well. We'll be right here at 7 p.m. The only thing I can tell you for sure is that you never know what's going to happen when you tune into Authors Up. So we invite you back. Hope you will be here. Have an absolutely amazing week, everybody. Stephen, thank you again. And we'll be back here next week, 7 p.m. for another edition of Authors Up. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Stephen.